I've always been drawn to true scary stories, the kind that make your skin crawl and your heart race, especially those that unfold in the dead of night. There's something about the middle of the night, the way the world falls silent, the shadows stretch long and dark, and the familiar feels suddenly unfamiliar, that amplifies every little sound and flicker of movement. It's a time when most of us are vulnerable, our guard lowered in sleep, and yet, it's also the hour when the most chilling tales seem to come alive. I remember sitting alone one night, the clock ticking away from the city's relentless and feeling that eerie stillness. The house was a dream in many ways. It's a quiet, unlike any windows that caught even the smallest creak or rustle, and a porch swing that creaked softly when the wind blew. It's that quiet that sets the stage. There was something perfect backdrop for what I'm about to share. Something intangible that settled. 6 real-life stories, each one happening when the world was at its darkest and most silent, proving that sometimes the night isn't just quiet, it's watching. The first story comes from a woman who lived alone in a modest apartment on the edge of the city. She was used to the solitude, the peacefulness of her own space after a long day. But one night, that peace shattered. It started subtly, with the faintest sound, a soft tap, tap, tap coming from the hallway outside her bedroom door. She told herself it was nothing, maybe the building settling or a neighbor moving around. But as the minutes dragged on, the tapping turned into footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing just beyond the door. She froze in bed, her breath shallow, every muscle tensed. She lived alone, and the idea of someone else in her home sent a wave of panic crashing through her. The footsteps paused, then resumed, moving closer, closer, until they seemed to circle the room. Her mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was her imagination, she thought. Maybe the sound was coming from somewhere else. But deep down, she knew this was different. As the footsteps grew nearer, objects in the room began to move on their own. A picture frame tilted sideways, a chair scraped softly against the floor. She could feel a presence, something unseen but undeniably there. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure it would give her away. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, hands trembling, but just as she was about to call for help, the footsteps stopped abruptly. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. The kind of silence that presses in on you, thick and heavy. Then, a faint creak came from the closet, the one she always kept locked. She swallowed hard, mustering every ounce of courage, and quietly got out of bed. She moved toward the closet, each step a battle against the rising fear clawing at her throat. When she finally opened the door, she found it empty. But something was off. The door, which she always locked before bed, was slightly ajar. She reached inside and her fingers brushed against something cold and hard. A flashlight, and beneath it, a pair of shoes that definitely weren't hers. The intruder had been hiding there, just feet from where she slept, watching and waiting. She backed away slowly, grabbing her phone to call the police. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she explained the situation, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. The dispatcher assured her help was on the way, but the minutes dragged like hours. Every creak, every shadow seemed to stretch and twist into something more menacing. When the police finally arrived, they swept through the apartment and found signs of forced entry and a few hidden places the intruder might have used. Thankfully, they did not catch him inside, but the woman was left shaken to her core. The sense of safety she once took for granted was shattered, replaced by a constant, gnawing fear. In the nights that followed, she found it impossible to sleep. Every small noise, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, set her nerves on edge. She installed security cameras and changed the locks, but the shadow of that night lingered, a dark stain on the quiet hours when the world should have felt safe. Her story is a chilling reminder of how the middle of the night can strip away our illusions of safety. When the house is silent and the world outside fades away, the vulnerability we feel is real, and sometimes that vulnerability is preyed upon. It's in those silent moments, the footsteps in the hallway, the soft creak of a door, that fear takes root, reminding us how fragile our sense of security really is. This woman's experience was only the beginning, a glimpse into the unsettling truths that night can hold. In the coming stories, you'll hear of others who faced the unknown in those dark hours, each encounter as real and terrifying as the last. But for now, remember this: when you're alone in the night and you hear a sound that shouldn't be there, It might just be more than your imagination. That night, the woman's story lingered in my mind, a haunting echo of how the quiet can turn sinister when you least expect it. But the night holds more than one tale, and the second story I want to share is about a man camping alone in the woods, a place where the silence isn't just eerie, it's alive. He was an experienced outdoorsman, someone who knew the forest well, or so he thought. Seeking solitude, he pitched his tent deep among the trees, far from any campsite or trail. The sun dipped below the horizon, and as darkness settled, the forest transformed. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves faded, replaced by a deeper, almost unnatural stillness. At first, he welcomed the quiet, the perfect escape from the chaos of everyday life. But as he settled in for the night, that stillness began to feel less peaceful and more unsettling. Just as he was drifting off, he heard it, a whisper, soft and distant, like someone speaking just beyond the edge of his hearing. He strained to listen, but the words were indecipherable, carried on a cold, night breeze that made the hairs on his arms stand up. He told himself it was the wind, or maybe an animal moving through the underbrush. But the whispers didn't fade away. Instead, they grew clearer, more distinct, almost as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate. His heart began to race, but he forced himself to stay calm, reminding himself that fear often plays tricks in the dark. Still, the whispers persisted, weaving around his tent like invisible threads. He lay frozen, the sounds scraping against his nerves. The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt alive with unseen eyes watching him. He reached for his flashlight, shining it through the tent's thin fabric, but all he saw was darkness. The beam cut through the blackness, illuminating nothing but the swaying branches and the empty forest floor. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate, circling the tent. Each step was measured, slow, as if the entity outside was savoring the moment. The man's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to call out, to demand whoever was out there show themselves, but his voice stuck, choked by a rising panic. He heard a faint scratching, like claws dragging along the tent fabric. The sound sent a shiver down his spine. He shone the flashlight again, this time with more urgency, but the glow revealed only shadows dancing in the trees. The whispers turned into low growls, guttural and primal, vibrating through the thin walls of his shelter. Fear took hold. He knew he wasn't alone, and whatever was outside was no ordinary animal. His instincts screamed at him to flee, but the forest was a maze, and running blindly could lead him deeper into danger. He tried to steady his breathing, telling himself to wait for daylight, but the menace outside was relentless. Suddenly, the tent fabric tore with a violent rip. The man barely had time to react before he was plunged into the cold, dark woods. Heart pounding, breath ragged, he sprinted away, branches clawing at his skin, roots threatening to trip him. In the chaos, the whispers and growls faded behind him, but the terror remained, driving him forward. He didn't stop until he reached a faint glow in the distance, a ranger station. Gasping for air, he pounded on the door until it swung open. The ranger inside looked at him with concern, listening intently as the man recounted the night's horrors. The ranger explained that there had been reports of strange occurrences in the area. Unexplained noises, sightings of something large moving through the trees, but nothing concrete enough to investigate. The man's story fit the pattern, a terrifying brush with whatever lurked in the darkness. That night, the forest revealed its other side, the one hidden beneath the canopy of stars and the rustling leaves. It was a place where whispers turned sinister, where silence isn't empty but filled with unseen threats. The man's experience was a stark reminder that nature's beauty can mask dangers that defy explanation, especially when the night deepens and shadows grow long. As I listened to his account, I realized how the night's quiet can deceive us. In the city, it might be footsteps in a hallway. In the woods, it's whispers and growls just beyond the tent's thin walls. The fear is the same, an unsettling reminder that when darkness falls, the unknown comes alive in ways we can barely comprehend. This story, like the first, is a glimpse into the unpredictable nature of nighttime terror. It shows how, despite our knowledge and experience, the night can still catch us off guard, turning the familiar into something frightening. The man's escape was narrow, His encounter brief, but searing enough to haunt him long after the sun rose. There's a peculiar vulnerability in being alone at night, whether in a city apartment or a forest tent. The darkness strips away our sense of control, leaving us to face our deepest fears. And sometimes, those fears are not just in our minds but real, lurking just out of sight. The night is a realm where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where silence can whisper threats, and shadows can conceal dangers. This man's story is a warning to anyone who ventures into the dark alone. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and remember that the night holds more than just dreams. As the night deepened outside my window, I couldn't shake the image of that man running through the woods, chased by something unseen. It was a powerful reminder that the middle of the night is not just a time for rest. It's a time when the unknown can reach out, testing our courage and resolve. And so, the night continues to hold its secrets, waiting for the next story to be told, the next fear to be faced. But for now, this man's harrowing experience remains a chilling testament to the dangers that lurk when the world falls silent and darkness takes hold. The man's frantic escape from the forest marked only the beginning of a terror that refused to let go. When he finally reached the ranger station, gasping and disoriented, relief washed over him, until he realized the full weight of what had just happened. The night wasn't just a backdrop for his fear, it was the stage for something far more sinister. As he sat inside, catching his breath, the ranger listened carefully, every detail of the encounter etched into the man's face. The way the whispers had started as faint murmurs, barely audible, then morphed into low growls that vibrated through the tent walls, the ominous footsteps circling him in the dark, the sudden violent tearing of the tent fabric that forced him into the cold woods. The ranger nodded slowly, a grim expression shadowing his features. "There's been talk," the ranger said quietly, "of a presence out here, something no one can explain. People hear voices, see shadows moving just beyond sight, but by the time anyone arrives, there's nothing to find." The man shivered, realizing he had been lucky to escape with his life. The ranger's words confirmed something he had suspected all along. This was no ordinary animal or prank of the mind. It was something else, something that used the night as its hunting ground. The weight of the discovery pressed down on him as he replayed the moments leading up to his escape. The whispers had been too deliberate, too purposeful to be random noise. They had threaded through the darkness like a sinister invitation, pulling him deeper into a trap he barely escaped. The growls weren't just animalistic sounds. They were warnings, echoes of something ancient and predatory. The man's mind raced back to the moment the tent was torn open. He could still feel the cold rush of air as the fabric ripped, the sudden, terrifying sensation of being exposed and vulnerable in the wilderness. He had stumbled blindly, branches clawing at his skin, heart pounding wildly as he ran through the darkness, desperate for safety. Every step was fueled by a primal survival instinct, but also by a creeping dread that whatever was chasing him was still out there, watching. The ranger handed him a flashlight and told him to stick close to the station for the night. Outside, the forest remained silent, but the man knew that silence was a veil, thin and fragile, waiting to be shattered by the next sinister sound. As he sat there, he realized that the night had stripped away the safety he'd once felt in nature. The woods, with all their beauty and peace by day, hid shadows that became terrifying once the sun disappeared. That night, the man struggled to sleep. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves, set his nerves on edge. He kept the flashlight close, ready to use at a moment's notice. The forest, which had once been a refuge, now felt like a cage, holding him in place until the dawn. In the days that followed, he couldn't shake the memory of those whispers or the feeling of unseen eyes tracking his every move. He spoke with other campers and rangers, discovering that his experience was not unique. Others had reported similar encounters, strange noises, fleeting shadows, an oppressive sense of being hunted. None had definitive answers, only the shared understanding that the forest at night held secrets better left undisturbed. The man's story became a cautionary tale among the local community, a reminder that the woods were not always the peaceful escape they appeared to be. The night could transform the familiar into something alien and threatening, and even those who thought they knew the forest well could find themselves prey to its mysteries. For the man, The experience changed how he saw the night. It was no longer a time for rest or solitude, but a realm where the unknown came alive, where silence could hide danger, and where courage was tested with every shadow. He carried that lesson with him, a reminder that the night's darkness was not just absence of light, but a presence all its own, one that demanded respect and vigilance. As I listened to his account, the image of those whispers and growls haunted me. The way the night could twist sound and silence into something threatening, the way unseen forces seemed to play just beyond the edge of perception. It was a chilling realization. The forest had revealed itself not as a sanctuary, but as a place where fear lived and breathed. This story, like the first, underscored a truth about the night. It's a time when the ordinary fades and the extraordinary takes hold. Whether it's footsteps in an apartment hallway or whispers in the woods, the night exposes our vulnerability in ways daylight never can. The man's narrow escape was a stark reminder that the night holds power. Power to unsettle, to terrify, and sometimes to destroy. It's a world where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and where the bravest among us must confront fears that lurk just beyond the light. And so, the night stretched on, deep and dark, filled with secrets waiting to be uncovered, each whisper and shadow a story waiting to be told. The woman who had faced the intruder in her apartment struggled long after the police left. Even with the locks changed and security cameras installed, sleep became a battleground. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the window, sent her heart racing. She lay awake for hours, staring into the dark, wrestling with the images of that night, the shadow lurking in her closet, the footsteps circling her bedroom door. The sense of safety she once took for granted had been shattered, replaced by a gnawing, relentless fear. She found herself pacing the rooms in the middle of the night, checking doors and windows repeatedly, convinced that the intruder might return. The silence that once comforted her now pressed heavily, each quiet moment a reminder of how vulnerable she really was. The night had become a place of dread, a time when her mind churned with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Her friends and family noticed the change. The woman who had been independent and self-assured now spoke in hushed tones about the fear that gripped her. She avoided being alone after dark, and her once peaceful home felt like a trap, each shadow a potential threat. The trauma of that night had seeped into every corner of her life, altering her routine and her sense of normalcy. She began to carry a small pepper spray with her at all times and set up motion-activated lights around her apartment. The security cameras recorded every movement, but the footage was a cold comfort. Knowing she could see what was happening didn't erase the terror of not knowing when the next threat might come. The fear was no longer just about an intruder. It had become a pervasive anxiety that haunted her waking hours. Counseling helped somewhat, but the memories clung stubbornly. She spoke about how the night had transformed from a sanctuary into a battleground, how something so simple as the sound of footsteps could unravel a person's sense of peace. The psychological scars were deep, and every night brought a fresh wave of unease. In time, she made changes to her lifestyle, moving to a different neighborhood and limiting her outings after dark. The night, once a time for rest, had become a time to survive. Her story is a stark reminder of how quickly the ordinary can turn into the terrifying, how the quiet moments can expose our deepest vulnerabilities. It's strange how the night can reveal what daylight hides, the fragility of our safety, the thin line between peace and fear. For her, the night is no longer a time to relax, but a reminder of how close danger can be, how easily the shadows can creep into our lives. Her experience echoes a universal truth. When the world is still and silent, the smallest sound can become a signal of something far more ominous. The darkness doesn't just hide threats, it magnifies them, turning ordinary noises into sources of terror. This woman's story is the first thread in a larger tapestry of nighttime fears, a glimpse into the unsettling reality that when the lights go out, the unknown takes over. It's a reminder to all of us that the night, with all its quiet and calm, holds a power that is both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. As she learned to live with her fears, she discovered the importance of vigilance and self-protection, but also the challenge of reclaiming a sense of normalcy in the aftermath of trauma. The night had changed her, but it had not defeated her. Her story is a testament to resilience in the face of fear, a reminder that even when the darkness seems overwhelming, there is strength in standing firm. The night may hold shadows, but it can also reveal the courage we carry within. While the woman was still grappling with the lingering fear that haunted her nights, another story was unfolding in a vastly different setting. Deep in the woods where civilization's reach fades and nature's silence reigns. This next tale centers on a man who decided to camp alone, seeking peace and solitude far from the noise of everyday life. What he found instead was a chilling reminder that the night holds dangers no one can predict. The man was no stranger to the wilderness. He was an experienced camper who had spent many nights under the stars, confident in his knowledge and preparation. This trip was meant to be a break from the chaos, a chance to reconnect with nature and himself. As the sun set and the last light slipped beneath the horizon, he settled into his tent, cocooned by the towering trees and the thick underbrush. At first, the forest seemed peaceful. The usual sounds of daytime creatures faded, replaced by the gentle whisper of wind through the leaves. The man felt a calm wash over him, the kind that comes from being surrounded by nature's quiet embrace. But as darkness deepened, that calm began to unravel. Just as he was drifting towards sleep, a faint sound caught his attention, a whisper, barely audible, threading through the night air. It was so soft he wasn't sure if he'd imagined it. He listened closely, but the words were indistinct, carried on the breeze in a way that made them slip through his grasp. He told himself it was the wind, or perhaps a small animal moving nearby, and tried to settle back down. But the whispers didn't fade. Instead, they grew clearer, winding around the tent like invisible fingers. The man's unease grew alongside the sounds. The night that had seemed so inviting now felt heavy, as if the darkness itself was pressing in on him. He lay still, heart pounding, muscles tense, as the whispers floated closer, more purposeful. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate, circling the tent at a distance that was close enough to be terrifying, but far enough to remain unseen. The man's breath hitched. He grabbed his flashlight and aimed it through the thin fabric wall, but the beam revealed only the shifting shadows of trees and leaves. The scratching started next, sharp, scraping sounds along the tent's surface. His hands shook as he aimed the light again, desperate to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there. But the darkness held its secrets tightly, the forest refusing to give up its mystery. The whispers turned into low growls, guttural and primal, vibrating against the canvas of the tent. The man's mind screamed at him to run, but his body was frozen with fear. He tried to convince himself it was an animal, something natural and explainable, but deep down, he knew this was something else, something darker. Suddenly, the tent fabric ripped open with a violent tear. The man barely had time to react before he was thrown into the cold, unforgiving forest. Heart pounding and breath ragged, he scrambled to his feet and ran blindly through the trees, branches clawing at his skin, roots threatening to trip him. Every step was fueled by raw terror and desperation. He didn't stop until he saw the faint glow of a ranger station in the distance. Bursting through the underbrush, he pounded on the door until it opened, gasping for breath and shaking uncontrollably. Inside, the ranger listened as the man recounted the night's events, eyes widening with concern. The ranger explained that strange occurrences had been reported in the area. Unexplained noises, sightings of large shadows moving just beyond the tree line, but nothing concrete enough to investigate. The man's story fit a pattern of unsettling encounters that left many campers terrified and puzzled. That night, the man learned that the wilderness, for all its beauty and tranquility, holds mysteries that defy explanation. The forest, once a sanctuary, had revealed itself as a place where the unknown lurks just beyond the light of a flashlight, where whispers turn sinister and silence conceals threats. His experience was a stark reminder that no amount of preparation can fully shield us from the night's hidden dangers. The wilderness, like the city apartment in the previous story, became a place where fear thrives in the dark and the familiar becomes alien. As I listened to this man's story, I was struck by how the night, whether in a bustling city or a remote forest, holds the power to unsettle and terrify. The darkness strips away our sense of control and exposes us to fears we can barely comprehend. This man's encounter is yet another thread in the tapestry of nighttime terror, a tale of vulnerability, courage, and the unknown. It reminds us that the night, with all its quiet and calm, is never truly empty, but filled with whispers and shadows that challenge our very sense of safety. And so, as the night deepened outside my window, the image of that lone camper, trapped in a tent surrounded by unseen threats, stayed with me, a haunting testament to the unpredictable horrors that the darkness can bring. The man's terrifying night in the forest was far from over. Just when he thought the whispers and low growls were the worst he'd face, the sounds escalated, filling the dark with an almost tangible menace. The footsteps that had circled his tent grew louder, more deliberate, as if whatever was out there was closing in, savoring the fear it was instilling. He gripped his flashlight tightly, shining it wildly around, desperate to catch a glimpse of his tormentor. But the beam cut through only empty darkness, the forest floor littered with leaves and twisting roots. The shadows seemed to dance just beyond the edge of the light, shifting in ways that didn't belong to any animal he knew. Then came the scratching, sharp, frantic, scraping noises along the tent's fabric. It wasn't random or accidental. It was purposeful, as if something with claws or nails was trying to tear through the thin canvas to get at him. The man's heart hammered in his chest, every instinct screaming for him to run, but the fear rooted him in place. The whispers, once distant and almost melodic, twisted into guttural growls that vibrated against the tent walls. They were animalistic yet somehow intelligent, a language of menace that spoke directly to his primal fear. The man's breath came in shallow gasps as he realized this was no ordinary predator. This was something else entirely. He tried to steady his shaking hands, focusing the flashlight on the source of the sounds. But the darkness revealed nothing but the dense underbrush and the towering trees, indifferent witnesses to his terror. The growls morphed into snarls, a chilling symphony that echoed through the forest surrounding him. Suddenly, with a violent tear, the tent fabric was ripped open. The man barely had time to react before he was plunged into the cold, unforgiving night. Panic surged through him as he scrambled to his feet, branches scraping his skin, roots threatening to trip him at every step. His lungs burned as he sprinted blindly through the woods, heart pounding so loudly he was sure it would give him away. Behind him, the growls faded but didn't disappear, a haunting reminder that the danger was still close. The man ran until exhaustion took over, his body trembling with fear and adrenaline. Only when he reached the faint glow of a ranger station did he find a semblance of safety. Inside, the ranger listened intently as the man recounted the escalating horror, the whispers turning to growls, the footsteps circling, the relentless scratching, and the sudden attack on his tent. The ranger's expression was grave, confirming that the area had a history of eerie occurrences that defied explanation. He explained that several campers had reported similar experiences, strange sounds in the night, shadows moving just beyond sight, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched or hunted. No one had concrete evidence, but the pattern was undeniable. The forest held secrets, and the night was when those secrets came alive. The man's encounter was a stark reminder of how the wilderness, beautiful and serene by day, transforms under the cover of darkness. The night amplifies fear, turning natural sounds into sinister signals and shadows into lurking threats. Even the most prepared and experienced can find themselves vulnerable when faced with the unknown. As the man recovered, the weight of the experience settled over him. The night had revealed a side of the forest he never expected, a place where the boundary between reality and nightmare blurred, and where survival depended on more than just skill and knowledge. His story added another layer to the tapestry of nighttime terror, a vivid illustration of how darkness can twist the familiar into something terrifying. It's a world where whispers become warnings, footsteps become threats, and the thin walls of a tent offer little protection against the unknown. Listening to his account, I was struck by the primal fear that the night can unleash. It's a reminder that no matter how much we try to control our environment, the darkness holds an unpredictability that tests our courage and resolve. The man's ordeal in the woods stands as a chilling testament to the power of the night, to unsettle, to frighten, and to remind us that sometimes the most terrifying things are those we cannot see but only hear, sense, and feel lurking just beyond the light. The moment the tent was ripped open, the man's world exploded into chaos. The violent tear of the fabric was like a scream in the silent forest, and before he could fully process what was happening, he was thrown into the cold darkness outside. The shock of exposure was immediate, a sharp, biting cold against his skin and the rough earth beneath his feet. His heart pounded wildly, threatening to burst out of his chest as adrenaline took over. Without hesitation, he scrambled to his feet, branches snapping and leaves crunching underfoot as he sprinted blindly through the woods. Every sense was heightened, every sound, every shadow pressing in around him. The growls that had chased him faded behind, but the fear that fueled his flight remained vivid and raw. He didn't look back. The forest, once a place of peace and solitude, had become a labyrinth of terror. Roots snagged at his shoes, branches whipped his face, and the uneven ground threatened to send him sprawling with every desperate step. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but the primal instinct to survive pushed him onward. Through the dense trees, he searched desperately for any sign of safety. After what felt like an eternity running through the darkness, a faint glow appeared ahead, a beacon in the night. It was the ranger station, a small outpost that promised refuge from the unknown horrors lurking in the woods. Bursting through the underbrush, the man reached the station and pounded on the door until it swung open. Inside, the warmth and light were a stark contrast to the cold and darkness outside. The ranger looked up, startled by the man's frantic state, and quickly ushered him in. The man gasped out the story of the night, the whispers that turned to growls, the footsteps circling his tent, the scratching at the fabric, and finally, the violent attack that forced him into the forest. His voice trembled with exhaustion and fear, but he recounted every detail with clarity, as if reliving the nightmare. The ranger listened intently, nodding with a grave expression. "You're not the first to tell a story like this," he said softly. "There have been reports for years. Campers hearing strange voices, seeing shadows that vanish when approached, feeling watched. Some say it's animals, others believe something else entirely. Whatever it is, it's real, and it's dangerous." The man sat down, the weight of the night's terror pressing down on him. He realized how close he had come to becoming another mysterious disappearance, another whispered warning to those brave, or foolish, enough to camp in these woods. The ranger assured him help was nearby and that patrols would increase, but the man knew some dangers couldn't be patrolled away. As dawn broke, the forest transformed yet again. The sinister whispers and growls faded into the background noise of birdsong and rustling leaves. The trees, once looming threats, now stood as silent sentinels bathed in morning light. But for the man, the memory of that night, the terror, the chase, the unknown presence, would never fade. His harrowing escape underscored the thin line between safety and danger in the wild. The night had exposed him to a reality beyond the ordinary, where unseen forces stalk and test the limits of human courage. His story was a stark reminder that, regardless of experience or preparation, the darkness can always hold surprises that shake us to our core. As he left the ranger station, the man carried with him a new respect for the night's power, a power that could turn even the most peaceful setting into a place of fear. His ordeal became a haunting chapter in the collection of nighttime horrors, a vivid example of how the unknown can suddenly burst forth from the shadows. Listening to his story, I was struck by the raw terror of those moments, the frantic flight, the desperate search for safety, and the fragile relief of finding refuge. It's a reminder that sometimes survival hinges on nothing more than the will to run and the hope that help is close. The night holds many secrets, and for this man, those secrets had nearly swallowed him whole. But his escape stands as a testament to resilience in the face of the unknown, a story of a terrifying night that ended with a breathless sprint towards safety, leaving behind a darkness that still lingers in memory. After the man's frantic escape and the long night spent recounting his ordeal, the ranger took a moment to explain what little was known about the strange events in the area. "There have been reports over the years," the ranger said, his voice low and serious, "of something unusual out here. People hear whispers that don't belong to any animal, footsteps that circle tents like silent predators, and growls that don't quite match any creature we know. It's as if the forest holds a presence that only reveals itself after dark. The man listened, feeling a cold shiver run down his spine. It was one thing to face fear in the moment, but hearing that others had encountered the same inexplicable phenomena made the experience all the more real and terrifying. The ranger went on to say that despite increased patrols and investigations, no one had ever captured solid evidence of what exactly haunted these woods. Cameras and sensors often malfunctioned or turned up blank, and many who reported encounters were dismissed as being overactive or misinterpreting natural sounds. But the pattern was undeniable. Night after night, campers and hikers spoke of a presence that defied explanation. As dawn crept over the forest, the man glanced out the window, watching sunlight filter through the towering trees. The sinister whispers, the circling footsteps, and the growls had vanished with the night, replaced by the calm and familiar sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves. The forest looked peaceful, almost inviting, as if nothing had disturbed its quiet embrace. But the man knew better. He understood that the darkness had a way of revealing secrets the light tried to hide. The night transformed the forest, turning it into a realm where ordinary sounds became threats and shadows took on a life of their own. Reflecting on his terrifying encounter, the man realized that the experience was more than a brush with the unknown. It was a confrontation with a force that tested the limits of human courage and perception. The forest held mysteries that defied logic, where fear was not just an emotion but a tangible presence that could reach out and touch you. This realization changed how he viewed the wilderness forever. The forest was no longer just a place of beauty and solitude, but a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred under the cloak of night. It was a place where survival depended not only on skill and preparation, but on respect for the unseen forces that roamed in the dark. His ordeal became part of a larger story, a collection of encounters that reveal the unpredictable and sometimes terrifying nature of nighttime. It serves as a reminder that the unknown isn't always lurking in the shadows. Sometimes, it's woven into the very fabric of the places we think we know best. As I sat listening to the man's story, I was struck by how the night could transform the familiar into something alien and frightening. It's a world where silence doesn't mean peace, where darkness amplifies fear, and where the unknown waits patiently for the right moment to make itself known. The ranger's words echoed in my mind long after the tale ended. The forest holds secrets that humans may never fully understand. And sometimes, those secrets are best left undisturbed. The man's experience stands as a chilling testament to the power of the night, a power that can unsettle even the most seasoned and prepared. It reminds us that when darkness falls, the world changes, and the line between safety and danger can vanish without warning. And so, the night continues its eternal dance of shadows and whispers, holding stories like this one, stories of fear, survival, and the mysterious forces that come alive when the world goes dark. The stories I've shared tonight, of the woman alone in her apartment and the man lost in the woods, are just glimpses into the unsettling reality that midnight holds a special place for fear to thrive. There's something about the middle of the night that strips away the distractions of the day, leaving us exposed to the rawest, most primal parts of ourselves. It's a time when shadows lengthen, silence deepens, and the unknown feels closer than ever. Each of these 6 true stories reveals the unpredictable nature of nighttime terrors. Whether it's footsteps echoing in a quiet hallway, whispers circling a tent deep in the wilderness, or the sudden, violent intrusion that shatters a fragile sense of safety, the night has a way of turning ordinary moments into chilling encounters. What ties these stories together is not just the fear they evoke, but the way they show how vulnerable we become when darkness falls. In daylight, we can rationalize, explain away strange sounds and fleeting shadows. But at night, our minds race, senses sharpen, and the line between reality and imagination blurs. The quiet becomes deafening, and the smallest noise can ignite a storm of terror. It's also clear that the night doesn't discriminate. It can reach into a city apartment, a quiet suburban home, or the heart of a dense forest. No place is truly safe when the world is hushed and shadows creep. The stories remind us that fear is universal, but so too is the courage it inspires. As I reflect on these tales, I'm reminded that staying aware and respecting the mysteries the night can bring are crucial. It's not about succumbing to fear, but understanding that the night holds power, a power that demands vigilance and humility. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is acknowledge that some shadows are best watched, not challenged. So, the next time you find yourself alone in the dark, listening to the silence and feeling the weight of the night pressing in, remember these stories. Remember that the night is a realm where the ordinary can become extraordinary, where fear can take root, and where survival often depends on the sharpness of your senses and the strength of your spirit. The night is always waiting, always watching, and sometimes it speaks in whispers and footsteps that only the brave dare to hear.